Talking Halos is presented to you by Blue Wire Podcasts. Welcome to the show. This is Derek Ciapola with my co-host of Partners in Crime, Jared Timms and Nate Green. This is our post-trade deadline edition. Hey, we're sorry, by the way. Everybody was out this week. I was out. Jared's finishing his season, so we didn't get this podcast out sooner to you. Want to get it out to you now. It's our deadline grades. First things first, Jared, how you doing, man?
Not doing too bad. Like you said, season's over now, so yeah, really diving into Angels baseball now, and I'm excited to get it rolling here again, get this going on more of a weekly basis, and talk a little more Angels baseball. I'm excited. First time in a while, I'm excited for the future. You know, there's more to build on now. So, Nate, I know you're not excited because you're never excited, but yeah, I'm excited.
There he goes with his GM apologetics over there. Always has to give the GM the benefit of the doubt, no matter if this could be the worst Angels team in Angels history. It's got a chance. But there is Jared always finding a way to give the GM the benefit of the doubt. We are doing better today, though, because we are a little bit more at ease than we were after the trade deadline, because on deadline day, I was pissed. And, I think I'm a little bit less pissed, not because I'm more happy with the deadline, but because some time has passed and I'm allowed to relax a little bit.
So let me get this right. Just the vibe I'm feeling. Jared, a little more optimistic. Nate, not. Negative Nate, positive Jared. Yin and yang. I
Okay.
guess it kind of falls on me to fall in the middle here, but I'm not going to, by the way. It's look, I'm not going to. So that said, on our last show, we talked about the Carlos Estevez trade, getting a couple of decent prospects, good prospects out of it. And then we kind of talked about the idea that we're going to have more trades coming. Well, there was one, just one. Luis Garcia, who was the closer for all of one day, gets traded to the Boston Red Sox. That's the story. Gets traded to the Boston Red Sox for a handful of prospects. This is where we go to Jared to fill us in on those prospects because I don't know anything about them. Jared, go.
Yeah. Quick rundown here. Matthew Lugo, probably the best prospect the Angels got in this trade, has a chance to start on the Angels next year because, well, they're probably going to need some starting outfield help. You're going to probably give him an opportunity, and he's more than likely that guy. Gives the Angels some outfield depth. In any other arc, he's a fourth, fifth outfielder, but there's a chance he starts on the Angels for sure. They might try him in the infield as well. He was drafted as an infielder, has the ability to do that, so he's athletic. Already hit a bomb not in Salt Lake, there in Tacoma, but his first at bat they hit a bomb. In my opinion, next best piece, Ryan Zefferjon, reliever. Big fastball, upper nines, can touch triple digits with it. Has already touched 99 miles an hour in Salt Lake, so there's that as well. And then he's got the nice little slider as well. If he can command the zone, they got a nice reliever there. Basically, if you want to put a Luis Garcia comp on him, that's totally fine. He's Luis Garcia. I heard a better one, Ty Buttrey. He's very much so Ty Buttrey, and that's just because he's a big, tall righty that's coming from Boston, which the Angels have gotten before. Next piece, not Ryan Zeffer-Jones, Nico Cavadas, big left-handed bat, first base DH type of guy. Will slot in the back. I mean, I know Pipeline put him in their Angels top 30. He's going to slot just after 30 for me. Big power bat, swings and misses a lot, can walk a lot, 3 true outcomes. And that's really who he is. If you want to throw the Trey Cabbage comp on him, those of you who like Trey Cabbage, that's totally fine. He's probably going to be in Salt Lake and absolutely rake in Salt Lake. If not at the end of this year, next year. I mean, that's kind of that guy. And then the fourth piece they got, so a lot of pieces that they got in this Luis Garcia trade is Jefferson Vargas, I believe was his last name. Already pitched down in Inland Empire. Fastball 93 to 95, has a decent slider. Probably a reliever mold unless you think that he can start at some point. But yeah, if you want to say quality over quantity, that's totally fine. But the amount of the amount of guys they got for Luis Garcia as a 2-month rental is pretty impressive, I think. I know a lot of these guys are on the 40 man, and you just the Red Sox probably aren't going to add most of these guys to the 40 man, and the Angels are going to have to, but yeah, it's a lot of pieces. It's interesting to say the least, especially like I said, for a reliever.
So nothing really though that stands out, right? There's no. Are there? Well, let me ask a question. Are there any top 30 guys in this trade?
Yeah, there definitely are. Matthew Lugo is going to slot in probably the 10 to 15 range for most people.
Hold on a minute, Nate. You okay over there?
Well, I'm like 17. Like that's where I thought he was going to be. So
I got him 10 to 15. He's going to slot in right behind Samuel Ottagary, who starts tonight in Rocket City. I'm extremely excited to see. It depends on who you're talking to. Ryan Zefferjohn's 26. I put him in the Michael Darrell Hicks range just because they're the same age. I like what they both bring to the table. Both not top 30 guys, just outside like that 30 to 35 range. And then same thing with Nico Cavadas. Like I said, Pipeline put him in the top 30 at number like 26. It's just if you think that he's a major leaguer, like it's same thing as Trey Cabbage, right? Trey Cabbage absolutely went and raked in AAA, came up to the majors and he hit for a little bit of power. He batted 170 or something like that, 210. I don't remember exactly what he batted. He walked a little bit. He's athletic. He doesn't really have a position. Like that's exactly what Nico Cavadas is. So if you think that he's going to hit 30 home runs at some point at the major league level, then sure, put him in the top 30. It's interesting though, like the fact he walks like I think 18% of the time. He's got some big power as well. He's never had a below 100 WRC plus in the minors, which is impressive, but he doesn't have a position to play either. So, platoony guy at best, can really hit right-handed hitters, but the Angels already have that at first base and Nolan Shanuel. So, I mean, it is what it is. We could see some of these guys get traded, next year again, to teams for, I don't know. So, but yeah, you got 1 to 3 top 30 prospects.
1 to 3.
Depending on
All
who you're
right,
talking
Nate.
to.
Nate,
you
go.
hit the nail on the head when you said quantity over quality, which is exactly what this trade was. I think they probably could have gotten some better pieces than what the Red Sox gave, but they waited too long. The Red Sox made at least one other move for a reliever before they ended up trading for Luis Garcia. So these guys are fine. It just a lot of them don't make sense for the Angels. Like you mentioned with Nico, like you already have a first baseman for the foreseeable future, based on taking him in the first round. You're not going to go replace him with an older guy who's never played in the major leagues. So he doesn't really make sense. It was just kind of one of those like, hey, how about we throw in this guy? He's not going to be on our 40 man next year, and we kind of have to add him. You guys have a open 40 man. It kind of sucks. Here, take this guy. That's kind of what it felt like for the Angels. Like, yeah, that's great. You got 4 guys, and of the 4 guys, maybe one of them actually is a legitimate big leaguer. And by legitimate big leaguer, I mean on the 26 man roster for more than a couple of weeks. And the sad part of you saying the Angels are going to need outfield help with, and Lugo's going to he's a 4th outfielder for other teams, but he could start for the Angels. That's not a good start for your, hey, there's a building block around this team. Also, he would have to be better than Joe Adell, Taylor Ward, and Mickey Moniak. The odds on that happening are, I mean, he could be better than Moniak. Adell has shown a little bit of something. I don't know about a lot, but he's shown a little bit of something. Taylor Ward, he's under contract for 2 more years after this. So, I mean, unless they ship him out, it's going to be tough for Lugo to beat those guys out. But sure, you got a bunch of guys that could fill holes and, claim the Angels have upper minor league depth. Sure.
So, my take on it. Disappointing. And the reason why is because they had more pieces to move. I'm not necessarily upset about the return, except there wasn't enough in terms of movement for a franchise that clearly needs it. If you're going to get quantity, fine, but make sure you get quantity, and 2 moves when you have guys you could have been moving, it just wasn't enough. So I liked, by the way, I liked the original Estevez trade. I thought the return on the Estevez trade was very good. The Luis Garcia trade being what it was, I mean, I get it, but to only stop there and it be what it was, that's where I'm disappointed. If you're gonna get quantity, then get quantity. And to only stop there when you need so much more help across the board to build that famous term we use around here, organizational depth, which means you have a franchise that has players that can move from top to bottom, that you're not just pulling guys off the street like the Angels have been doing for the last 5 years. And to me, that's problematic. Jared, hearing me say that, and you taking a look at everything going on with this trade deadline and where you think this franchise is going, how do you grade it?
I mean, first and foremost, you kind of hit it on the head here. You can definitely be a little bit disappointed that the Angels didn't go do more. But I don't know if the return was there. I'm gonna give it a D, which isn't great. Like I usually don't give things low grade, lower grades like that. I usually give it a C because it's like, well, one way or another. You got to be happy with the returns that they got for 2 rental pieces, even if it is quantity over quality, you got to be happy with those returns. However, you did expect them to do more, right? I mean, you look down, they probably weren't getting what they were asking for a guy like Luis Renifo, or Tyler Anderson, or a Taylor Ward, which is why they didn't go out and trade them, right? It would have been awesome to go see it, but would you have been happy if they didn't, get a top 100 prospect for Luis Renifo, who's arguably the best hitter in the market, right? Like, not saying that he's going to go hit for power, but arguably the best bat to ball hitter. Like, I mean, it's a major leaguer. You're not just going to go get quantity over quality for a Taylor Ward or a Luis Renifo. It would have been nice to see Tyler Anderson get traded as well. I think that this is going to be the highest that his value will be, but you never know. Next year at the same point, we could be saying the same thing, like, hey, why didn't they trade Tyler Anderson? Or, hey, they got a decent little return for Tyler Anderson, because the market was good for those rental guys. Teams didn't have to put Tyler Anderson in the rotation again. They just wanted them as a rental. They didn't want him for another year. So yeah, it's one of those things where you're happy with the return that they got for 2 relievers, especially. But you did expect them to do a little bit more. Kevin Pillar, it would have been cool, interesting to see him get traded. I don't know if he actually wanted to get traded or not. That's another thing, like guy retiring. I understand that you have to look out for what's best for the Angels' future, but there's also the fact that, like, hey, you got to kind of respect some guys as well. You can't just be like, oh, we're going to trade you away. Is as much as it does help the Angels' future, sometimes it doesn't, to have that type of that to be known as that team that's just going to trade you away, even though like Kevin Pillar might have wanted to stay in Anaheim. He's a SoCal guy. Maybe the Angels want to bring him back as a coach at some point, so yeah, sometimes you got to kind of just go with the player's wishes. There were some bullpen pieces that you would have liked to have seen gotten moved. Hunter Strickland's having a good year. Matt Moore's you would have assumed you could have gotten something from Matt Moore, though there's a lot on the contract left. And he hasn't been all that good this year. So, yeah, I give it a D, because you want them to do more for sure. But I also liked what they did with what they did trade away. They should have done more, though.
All right, Nate, you ready?
F. Yeah, and Jared, you can sugarcoat it all you want with Kevin Pillar, you don't want to be known as that team. You're already known as that team. You already DFA'd one of the greatest hitters of all time. You DFA'd Albert Pujols, who's arguably the greatest hitter of his generation, and you said, you know what, we don't want you. So you're already known as that team who's not going to do what's best for the players. Justin Upton, you DFA'd, which is fine, right? Like, they're already known as that org. So, like, keeping Kevin Pillar is not going to change the opinion of some of these teams. And who knows, you're probably going to have to do that with Anthony Rendon here in a couple of years too. Like, it could come to the last year of his contract and the Angels go, you know what, we're not going to, if he hasn't retired by that time, you know what, we're just going to DFA him, eat the money and move on. So like you're already known as that team. You might have to be known as that team again. Like trading Kevin Pillar, you got to do what's best for the organization. I guarantee you somebody would have given something for Kevin Pillar. We saw the Orioles move for a fourth outfielder, and we know Kevin Pillar is better than the fourth outfielder. They moved him for. Now, are you just moving guys to move guys at that point? Like, hey, we would have gotten, you know, a 23-year-old single A or whatever. Like, are you just moving guys to move guys? Yes, but also you're allowing some of these young guys to play, which I think is the big point of this deadline. The Angels, for a long time, have not done that. They continue to run this, hey, well, like, let's continue to try and compete. And then they end up in August, September, 20 games out, and it's the same show every year. And then they're wondering, hey, can Joe Adell play? Well, I don't know. You never give him an opportunity. So how do we know if he can play? How do you build next year around Joe Adell being your starting right fielder when the most games he's played in a row is 4? Hey, how about, can this guy pitch? Well, I don't know. You never let him pitch because you decided to let Johnny Cueto make starts instead of yeah, Dana or whoever. You know, fill in the blank with whoever you want. But the Angels are typically this team that give old guys opportunity in August and September when they're 15, 17 games out of the playoffs instead of letting some of these young guys like Michael Darrell Hicks should be in the bullpen right now. There are some other guys that should be given opportunities to just go play for 2 or 3 weeks straight. And it doesn't matter. You're not making the playoffs this year. The season's kind of over with in an Angels perspective. So like, let's go find out if some of these kids can play. If they can't, then you know what you need to do in the offseason. If they can play, then maybe that changes the outlook of the future. But it's a very disappointing deadline because not only did they not move guys like Kem Pillar, Hunter Strickland, Matt Moore, none of them have been placed on waivers yet either, which I think is another huge misstep. It could save the Angels some money. Not that that's a big deal to already, you know, we already know that's a big deal to him, but like it gives some young guys that opportunity. And that's what the Angels need to do right now is they need to give some young guys an opportunity to find out, hey, can you play? If not, we need to make other arrangements for next year because we are sick and tired of spending the most money in Major League Baseball on bullpen help when supposedly we have some guys in the org that can pitch out of the bullpen. Like we got some guys that throw pretty good out of the pen. So why are we spending money on bullpen pieces? Brandon Drury, like that's a guy that we haven't talked about. Brandon Drury should not be on this roster right now. Brandon Drury's hitting $160. He is showing why he's been DFA'd 4 times or 3 times or 2 times, whatever it's been. Brandon Drury should not be on this roster. I don't care that he, you know, can stand over at third base and throw the ball across the diamond. The Angels have to have somebody who can do that. Like I don't even care if it's Kyron Parrish right now. Like I know Kyron Parrish hasn't been able to hit, but I don't care. Like Brandon Drury brings no value hitting a $160 and being 34, 33 years old and like being a below average defender no matter where you put him. Like he just brings no value to this team. It's the last year of his contract. He has no business being on this roster right now.
Jared, can I reply to that?
No, I mean I don't disagree. Like it'd be great to see Charles LeBlanc up instead of Brandon Drury for sure.
He is up.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, like the Angels don't have. If he might, I'll say this now. He might get DFA'd on August 16th. That might be the move.
That's too long. That's too long.
I don't disagree, but I do agree in the bullpen. Like it would be great. I want to know what Michael Darrell Hicks is in the bullpen. Eric Torres. I want to know what those guys are in the bullpen. I definitely don't disagree about that. But like Brandon Drury, yeah, like I would have been nice to see him play a little better. I don't know if anybody was offering anything for Brandon Drury or even wants Brandon Drury. I'm gonna guess that Brandon Drury is probably the guy that gets DFA'd for Christian Moore on August 16th. That is when Christian Moore is coming up. Like I'm 1,000% sure. There's no doubt in my mind. Friday, August 16th against the Atlanta Braves, Christian Moore will be in Anaheim. Like there's no doubt in my mind at this point. He's already in Double-A. He's crushing the ball. It might be part of the signing agreement. Sorry to go off on a little tangent. It might be part of the signing agreement why he took under slot this year is like, hey, you're going to be up this year. You're going to be making a little extra money on a major league contract. So there you go. Besides the point. I don't disagree. I'd like to see what the Angels have in the bullpen. The bullpen's so volatile that, you know, what you see this year might not be the same guy. Like Michael Darrell Hicks, might not be the same guy next year. I would love to see Michael Darrell Hicks up. I really like the kid. Eric Torres, another kid I'd love to see. There's a lot of, I mean, if Ben Joyce was still down in the minors, it'd be great to see Ben Joyce up, but there aren't a lot of those guys that, like, Hans Kraus could be a piece that the Angels probably still have around next year. You know, I'd like to see Ryan Zephyr-Jones up. You're not wrong. 97 to 99, touching 100. Love to see him up. But the Angels don't have necessarily a lot of those guys that you can bring up. Like, you're gonna trade Taylor Ward away, and you want to see more of Jordan Adams, who's actually crushing the ball down in AAA right now. But you want to see more of Jordan Adams. Like, it's not like we're sitting here on a gold mine of, I don't want to see Caden Dana up this year. I really don't. Like, that's my issue with that. Like, Reed Detmers can stay down in AAA and continue to learn and continue to grow. There's other stuff going on there as well with Reed Detmers. But yeah, I don't think the Angels are in a huge need that they need to trade pieces away for all these other pieces. But that being said, again, like, it would have been nice to see the Angels make more trades at the deadline. But yeah, there aren't a lot of guys where I'm wanting to see them up right now at the major league level. Like, Nelson
Clarify,
Arada isn't
please.
batting 400. I don't need to see
Clarify,
Nelson
please.
Arada in center field.
Can you clarify what you mean by Reed Detmers has other stuff going on?
Oh, I think that they're working on a bunch of stuff with Reed Detmers in the minors right now, and I don't think that he needs to be up at the major league level. I think he can continue to work on stuff in the minors with those guys.
The thing is if a player needs work, that's one thing. And if a player needs work where they need to be away in the minors, away from the public eye, I get it. But at this point, I'm agreeing with Nate, though. Like, you need to have. I look at it this way, and I always fall back on the history background. Early 90s, okay, when the big crop of minor leaguers came up. And it's so sad, by the way, that it's been this long, by the way, that we would talk about this. You had Tim Salmon coming up, Garrett Anderson coming up, all these young guys coming up, Darren Erstad coming up. They eventually just put them in there. That's what the Angels did. They just put them in there, gave them their shot, and relied on those young guys. Chad Curtis was there at the time. He didn't last, but he was a guy who started off pretty well. At this point, you have guys, you're trying to figure who they are and what their future is, and yet we're relying on these old veterans. You stink anyways. You know, I just want the young kids come up and stink here and grow here and learn the major league game here. If you're trying to figure out who belongs where. So I don't see the point. Like, why go get Johnny Cueto for what? Why? Brand Drury.
It would have made sense if you traded Tyler Anderson. Like, Johnny Cueto makes sense because they don't really have too much starting pitching depth in the minor leagues. But, like, if you're not trading Tyler Anderson, Johnny Cueto, like, sure, why?
Well, even if they do, I mean, at this point, why? Like, I mean, it just seems to me like you had to think it was going to be somewhat difficult to move Tyler Anderson with his contract being what it was. He's a rental. That's what teams want to be. And if hindsight being 2020, it seems pretty obvious that people would want him as a rental because he's been so inconsistent in his career. He's not an innings eater. He doesn't go 7-8 innings a game, win or lose. He'll get you 5 or 6. Those are a dime a dozen. You can find guys who get you 5 and 6. So, you know, I just don't see the point. So I'll leave more than Nate way. All this said, here's a word from our sponsors. Okay, so my grade, by the way, F. But overall, where's this put Perry, guys? Jared, going to you. Where's this put Perry? Like, at this point, I know you're more of a Perry apologist.
That's the word I'd use.
Uh, so where does this put Perry in the grand scheme of things overall?
Um, I don't know. I really actually don't know. I know a lot of people want to keep him around. Um, I'm at the point where I don't want to start over again, right? You bring in a new GM, he's not going to like pieces. He's not going to like pieces. We see it every single time with new GMs. You're not going to like pieces. You're going to want to restart basically all over again. Bring in your guys, this, that, and another. It's hard. It's very hard to start over again. There is at least a plan in place here, right? Like you have pieces for the future, that you can continue to build around. If you talk to me right at the trade deadline, I'd say, man, he doesn't have a job. If you talk to me now, it'll be interesting to see this offseason if they keep him around. I'm interested in it to see if they keep him around for another year or if they're letting him go. I just don't want to see everything get restarted again, because that's what's going to happen again. And Nate, I know you're going to be like, well, there's a chance they bring in somebody. Artie's never brought anybody in. Carpino's never brought anybody in who's had any experience. Why is it going to change now? So I'm not on board with necessarily getting rid of Perry yet. There's a plan here. I don't want to restart again.
There's been a plan with all the GMs. There really has. Like every GM that's been fired has a plan. Now, has any of them worked out? No. Has Perry's worked out? No. He's failed miserably. You could add. He's been under 500. He's been under 500 every single time. He's been worse every year he gets. And it's just like you can point to the LA Chargers actually and say like some people do change. The LA Chargers have never spent money on a head coach. And they went out and got the best head coach available this year and went out and got Jim Harbaugh. That brings some energy in the building, knowing that, hey, we got a guy who could change the culture. And he wins everywhere he goes. All it takes is the Angels to make that one decision. And for us to just sit in this, hey, I don't want to make a change because it's going to be a growing pain. You're going to sit in mediocrity until you make a change. Because like if he's been mediocre
for the past 10 years, they just
got
Ron Washington.
He's been mediocre for 3 years.
Jim Harbaugh.
Why are we going to expect him to change just because we give him an extra year? He's all of a sudden not going to be mediocre because we gave him a 4th year.
You don't want Perry to change. You need somebody else to change.
No, because Perry is pulling the strings right now. And I don't care what anyone says. Like, I don't care if you're telling me that he wasn't allowed to spend $200 million. Where half the teams in Major League Baseball aren't allowed to spend $200 million. All right? Like, I don't care. We heard him all offseason. I'm gonna get organizational depth. I'm gonna put depth here, and we're still picking guys up off the street. It's August. We're still picking guys up off the street. And it's like you haven't done what you said you were going to do. And like eventually we have to hold somebody accountable instead of pointing the finger at Artie every single time. And eventually it's got to be somebody's fault because it's like, you know what? Like, who got to fire Joe Madden? We know Artie wouldn't fire Joe Madden. That's not an Artie move because that's from the 2002 team. That's from the history. That's not an Artie move to get rid of Joe Madden. Who fired Joe Madden? Perry Manasian. Who brought in Phil Nevin? Perry Manasian. Who was the one guy that was hired on the coaching staff of Joe Madden by Perry Manasian? That would be Phil Nevin. That's who he hired. Who's the one guy that Perry has hired as manager right now? It's Ron Washington, right? So he has pull in what he's doing right now. This is not Artie holding over his head. Now, if we want to talk about the Shohei Ohtani thing last year, like, yes, Shohei Ohtani was not traded because Artie did not want him traded. But Artie didn't go out and say, go spend all your money on bullpen. That's Perry's MO. Artie's not over here going, "Oh, you guys spent all your money on Robert Stevenson, who's not going to pitch this year," right? Like that's somewhere down the line we're gonna have to say like, "Hey, Perry swung big and he missed a lot. All of his free agents have missed basically." And you could argue that Tyler Anderson has been like a hit, but actually based on the numbers, he hasn't. So eventually you're going to have to just get out of the mediocrity, get somebody else in here and hope it works. Because if you continue to sit with mediocre, you're going to continue to be mediocre.
Here's my thought. Okay, when you're talking about looking at the history, the record of it, so on and so forth. Back when, and you can go back to the very old podcast, the first season or two of this podcast, and to stuff we talk about relating to Billy Upler. Okay, when we started the podcast, my view on Billy Upler was he had a plan. It was very obvious what his plan was. It was very clear what his plan was. In the end, did the plan work out? No, like you guys are saying. But you always knew what the plan was. You always kind of knew what he was trying to do. The thing that I really concerns me about Perry is he does things that don't make a whole lot of sense. And I'm going to go back to last season. Last season, Trey, you didn't mention this, but you gave plenty of other examples. Look at this. The deadline last year, when he should have been selling, what's he doing? He's buying. And he's buying on guys who weren't having the world's best season to begin with. And he's making moves and getting prospects for those guys. And now, lo and behold, a year later, they're trading away guys to get prospects. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's not a whole lot of method to the madness really kind of coming across here. And when you don't have an idea of what your vision is, or the people who need to support you, like the fans support you whether you realize it or not. And it's by the people who show up. If people stop showing up, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later, it's already happening some, to Angel games, and they stop buying the merch, and it is happening little by little, okay? It's going to affect you, right? It's going to affect how your job standing. I'm just saying, sooner or later, the support for Manasian runs out, and it's because of stuff like this. People don't know the vision. Back when Houston tore down to rebuild, the Houston organization basically told their fans, "This is what we're doing. Stay with us. We're reloading. Blah blah blah. We're going to tear down." And they did exactly what they said they were going to do, and they followed through. The Angels organization doesn't tell us anything. They just expect us to keep spending our money, going to ball games, buying merch. We have no clue what the vision is, no idea where they're trying to head, other than say, "Hey, we're trying to be competitive, we're trying to win." It's not good enough. And I think this is why I'm frustrated. I think tell me if I'm wrong, Nate. I think this is a lot of why you're frustrated, because we're not seeing what's the plan. Is there even a plan? I don't know. Jared?
Oh, yeah, I get it. I understand.
I mean, that's it. Come on. We got 2 minutes. I can't hear you, dude.
You muted yourself. I do know what the plan is that he's alluding to, though, that I can help him fill in the blanks. Like the plan for Perry is to draft as close to pro-ready guys as possible, put them in the big leagues and let them play. He kind of understands that the minor leagues, it's very hard to develop guys the way that Artie spends money down there. So he's trying to draft guys, barely let them get in the minor leagues so they're not really messed up, and then they go to the big leagues, and hopefully that's where most of the money is spent. Hopefully that's where they're able to thrive and continue to go. Now, is this plan sustainable? Yes, if you continue to hit on first round draft picks. But the moment you miss on a first round draft pick in a year or 2 or 3, that's where things start to unravel for this organization. And you've seen it. Like Sam Bachman hasn't been a hit. The hitters that they've drafted, up and down, you could argue some are hit, some are not. But that's what's going to come down to this team, is who hits and who doesn't when it comes to his model of drafting first round guys, hoping they get to the bigs and continuing to play well.
Do us a favor, folks. When we get this out on social media, on YouTube, leave your comments. Disagree or not. What do you think the vision is? Follow us on social media at X at Talking Halos. Follow Nate at NateGreen34. Jared_Tims. Follow me at Ciapola. We want to hear from you and tell us what you think the vision is. Until next time, have a great one. We're out of here.